were interested in the paranormal interest?
Well, I've always, well, if you like, I've had a lifelong interest in the paranormal from being very small. It's a story I've often repeated, but I mean, obviously for those that are new to the show, when I was very, very small, I used to see people that other people could not see, and my mother called a doctor. And I can always remember the doctor coming round to the house. I was probably about 6 or 7, and he sat with me for about half an hour chatting with me. Really nice man. And I could hear him talking to my mother to the effect that he doesn't think there's anything wrong with me psychiatrically, and perhaps it's just as children have. And so from that moment onwards, I never discussed it any further. I never reported anything to anybody, whatever I saw, but for fear of being ridiculed and having a finger pointed at me. I mean, I can remember being at a cricket match, which was attended by quite a number of quite well-known people, and there was a man walking around the crowd dressed in Victorian clothing, and nobody was aware of him. And I saw this man for about half an hour, and he was just mingling with the guests, but he never made physical contact. I never saw him pass through anybody. He just wandered around, and he was wearing a top hat, and his shirt, the ends that was turned over, and he was wearing a strange, tie, I suppose, for want of a better word, and he was wearing a three-piece suit, which was very old-fashioned. And that was probably the first time I saw somebody, and I kept pointing them out, and I was being told to be quiet. So really, basically, I could see these things and could react to their presences, but I had to bury them, and I did bury them, and I buried them for years and years and years and years, and eventually I never saw anything again. Well, not until I actually was coming towards the end of my service as a police officer, because during that period of time, if you like, my awareness of these things, not in the way that I experienced them as a child, but I was becoming more acutely aware of, empathically, of not only with on a spiritual level, but with real people too. I could sense how they were feeling deep down, and how friendly they could appear on the surface, but how cold they could actually be beyond that, below the surface. And it also helped me out a great deal as a police officer when I was interrogating people. I knew if they were telling me the truth or if they were lying. And on one occasion, I actually managed to get a man who was basically, as they say, banged to rights. He worked in a petrol gas station as a cashier, and a lot of the money was taken in the till, was put into a metal canister and dropped into a tube below the petrol station. And one of the canisters was missing, containing £200. And obviously, the only person that had access to that money at that period of time was this cashier. And he was interviewed by another officer. I never arrested him. He was arrested by another officer, and he was quite convinced that he was as guilty as hell. And I was chatting to him, and I just didn't believe that he had actually did it. I really didn't believe that he did it. And we basically delved in a bit deeper, and I asked about customers or people that were coming into the cashier's booth at that time. And he recalled 2 children, and one of them distracted him. I've got a description of the children and what school they went to. I contacted the relevant school, and they knew who I was talking about straight away. So obviously they had experienced issues with these 2 children. I went around to their house. Their parents tried to lie and cover for them with an alibi, but I searched on agreement. I hastened to add, I didn't have a warrant, but the parents allowed me to search one of the bedrooms of one of the boys, and under the bed was about £160, which was the money they had stolen from the petrol station. And what had happened was the man had put the money into a metal canister to put into the pipe that runs to the safe below the cashier's booth, and he was distracted by one of the kids, and the other one grabbed the tube, took the money out of it, and kept it. So the mystery was cleared and the man was released. And after that moment, from that moment onwards, I always listened to how I felt deep inside.
That's instinct. So that's pretty good there for your job. You have the instinct there to know whether somebody's telling the truth or not. Fantastic, isn't it?
Yeah, well, the problem is if someone is a psychopath, for example, not all psychopaths are violent. Some psychopaths generally are people that actually believe their own lies, and when you listen to them talk, they sound extremely convincing. And it's people like that when you're listening to them, and of course, as a police officer, you're more likely to come across a psychopath than you are than most other people would in their ordinary course of life. And just chatting to people like that, and when I talk about psychopaths, I'm not talking about people that run around with axes. I'm talking about people that are absolutely dead in their feelings towards other people. They have no emotionality towards anybody, and everything they do is an act. And there were police officers like that as well. I mean, these people rank in all of society, in politics, in religion, everywhere. They exist everywhere. And of course, it was easier for me to, if you like, divide the wheat from the chaff. And when you're dealing with these people, and you knew whether you were likely to have issues or problems with them, or whether you could trust them by how you felt. But the weirdest feeling that I ever experienced was in the hospital. I sat next to an old man, and it was a horrible feeling. But I actually felt he was going to die.
Really? Oh my goodness.
It was a very dark. It wasn't. When I say cold, it wasn't cold in the sense of touching and feeling cold. It just felt cold inside. And this old man that I was chatting to, he was visiting one of the patients at the hospital that I was visiting somebody else at. And I went back a couple of days later. He wasn't there, and he had died.
Really?
And that wasn't. And that's a feeling. Well, it's a feeling that I wouldn't like to experience with any person that I would come into contact with, you know?
You didn't even deny, didn't you? Of course. Good grief. Quite chilling, that. It
is quite chilling. I hasten to add, I haven't experienced that since then, but on another occasion, I was in a hospital protecting a prisoner, a man who was detained in hospital through injuries. And I was with another officer, and I left him momentarily to use the toiletry facilities. And as I walked past one of the patients, it was a lady pushing one of those drip stands. And as she brushed past me, her hand touched my hand briefly, and I had this intense pain across my abdomen. And I went to one of the staff nurses on duty, and I said, I know you're not going to answer this question because it's patient confidentiality. I said, but as that lady had an operation on her abdomen, and she said, well, I can't tell you that. And she looked at the notes, and I could see on her face a look of shock. She obviously had. And she said, how do you think you know that? And I thought, well, if you're asking me that question, it must be on the notes. But that's only one experience of many other different experiences I had. And of course, my interest and curiosity grew deeper and deeper. And then I started to think back to when I was a child and the experiences that I had then. And then towards the end of my service, I took a much deeper interest in the paranormal, not just on that, but on all aspects, from hands-on healing, to paranormal investigation, to EVP. Every possible facet of the paranormal was of great interest to me. And I studied the subject because of my own personal experiences, but the weirdest experience I had was from a medium. And she said that your late grandmother wants to make contact with you. And my late grandmother, in this case, died many years ago. And I said I would love to meet her. She just wants to share with you the fact that she's always with you. And I said, well, if she could show herself during the lunch hour, I'd rather it not be at night. Joking. And I came home one lunchtime at 12 midday. I walked into the dining room, and sat in the corner was this ectoplasmic, grey, greeny, glowy, fluffy image of my late grandmother. It was like basically, it was like a statue. It was just a figurine. It never moved. It was just a signal, a sign to show that she was there. And this figure remained sat in her favourite chair, which I recognised, even though the texture of this material wasn't obviously conducive to what wood would look like. I could recognise the outline shape of her and the chair that she was sat in. She was quite an elderly lady when I knew her. And the medium said to me, now the medium didn't know anything about my past at that time as a police officer. She said that when you were a young policeman, you used to come around the house. She was really proud of you in the police uniform. And I'm thinking, my God, how did she know that? And sure enough, she was there, and I spoke to her. I never got any kind of reaction or anything at all. It lasted for 15 minutes, and then the whole figure just gradually broke up into flakes of smoke and just completely evaporated and disappeared. And then the same medium again. I always a fascination with. I mean, I have mediumship abilities, empathic abilities, but to be honest, when some people that I've met are really, really, really good, very gifted people. And this person was a very gifted medium. And she said to me, there's an accident you went to years ago where a lady walked into, a lady was killed, and you tried to give her mouth-to-mouth resuscitation, but she was already passed, and there was nothing that you could do, and she's just come back to say thank you. How on earth did this lady know that? And sure enough, that was a true story. A lady walked into a power cable at the scene of a damage-only accident. She was a Dutch lady living in England, which ironically, she walked into a power cable from a pylon that had been brought down by a Dutch registered car and by an Englishman. How weird is that? And this poor woman, and myself and another officer, we spent 10 minutes giving her mouth-to-mouth resuscitation, and eventually we both sat. I could feel that her epiglottis was completely gone. I said, there was no pulse. I said, she's gone. And the other officer started crying, and I'll be honest with you, it was kind of surreal. We both sat there in the middle of the road. We both cried for about half an hour. While we were waiting for an ambulance and doctors and other people to arrive, we just sat there. There was nothing we could do about it. It was so tragic. And all this lady had done, she'd come out of her house to give us a cup of tea, and she walked into a power cable. And before the officer could shout to her to stop, she actually made contact with it and was killed. I arrived shortly after it happened. And when I saw her lying in the road and he was trying to revive her, we both, as I say, spent 10 minutes working on her. And yet this medium had picked that up with graphic quality. And so that really put me back onto the road again. And since then, it's been my lifelong sustainable interest in the paranormal to be able to explore it and to be able to disseminate the data and information that I collect and to be able to share it to a much wider audience.
It's a good tool, isn't it? I've been a medium, you pick up on things and somebody there and describe it to the people watching online. It's fabulous to have that ability, isn't it? Which I had it.
It's really weird that sometimes you walk into a building and you immediately feel an atmosphere, and sometimes information just literally flashes through your mind. It's completely disconnected with anything that you were thinking about, but the information is there, and you bring it forward, as it were. And I've had some really, really weird experiences, and I could probably sit here all night, to actually talk about it. But
speak like that. Everyone's got a certain amount of medium. Some's got it better and higher level than others. Do you have people got this ability, or they don't know they got it, or I don't know. Really.
Well, yeah, I think that people. I mean, I've met people. I've met. I think on one occasion a kid that was immensely gifted. And he actually was talking about things that I could see when I was a kid, like looking at old people wearing old clothing, for example. But the weirdest experience I had as a police officer, apart from all of that, was and this is where my last beat, we were parked at a road junction in the countryside, and it was myself and another officer, and we saw a woman wearing a blue 1940s style overall, factory worker, and she had a headscarf, and she was riding an old-fashioned bike, old lady's bike, and she huffed and she puffed around the corner. Her cheeks were red, and as she went around the corner, I said to the other officer, I said, I'm going to put money on this. I said, that is not real. He said, yes, it is. It's a woman on the bike going around the corner. So he was the driver of the car. I was the passenger. So anyway, he followed after her. And as we went around the bend, there was no trace of the bike anywhere, of her or the bike. And there was nowhere along that road where she could have come off from. So it was a thick hedgerow all the way around the bend. So there was no way she could have hidden herself. And yet she completely disappeared. And I think that was a residual energy. I think that was a residual appearance that appeared at that one moment, because during the war, where I live in this village, the factory here was used for war armaments, and she could have been riding into work at the factory. So I did some research to find out if anyone had died, and of course that transpired. Quite a few people had died along that road, and I couldn't necessarily tie it down to any particular year. So it was something from that day onwards that really got my interest. So yeah. That would give you a chill. I mean, when I started on YouTube, I started to share short clips of video. I wasn't a filmmaker of any description. I didn't like talking in front of the camera. It used to intimidate me very easily. And I used to share very short clips of activity in the house or at the airfield or other places. But the weirdest part was my work was immensely popular at that time, because I was just basically sharing interesting stuff, but not very well produced. And so I decided that I wanted to embark on a different course and actually start to produce more films on the paranormal and exploring different locations. And of course, that led on over the years to the person that I am today, as people refer to me as the man in the hat. And I'm within the context of that. What I'm trying to do, I really am appalled at the way paranormal investigation is going with regard to the media and through other sources. It has become a joke. It's become a magnet for people with mental issues. It's become a magnet for people with financial issues to make up a story. And it kind of has degenerated into something of a joke. And I thought, what about getting back to the real core of what ghost hunting was all about? You know, for example, Harry Price or M.R. James, who wrote obviously fictional ghost stories, but he managed to draw a certain feel that you experience, and particularly so in the region that I live in East Anglia, of this remoteness when you go to some locations where no one has been for a long time. You are the only living person, and you are experiencing these things that are going on around you. And I wanted to explore that as a theme much more deeply, and that's why I've progressed on the level that I'm working at the moment, because I would like to see that type of quality of television as opposed to the usual run-of-the-mill paranormal investigation group, go into haunted buildings, shout and scream a bit, or run out of the building screaming. And I that to me is so passé. I really want to get back to the core truth of the paranormal. And so, sorry?
You did brilliantly, by the way, as well. We love your show.
Oh, thank you. I mean, it's each show that I do now. Obviously, I'm exploring the history as before I go into the paranormal aspects, but I want to share with anyone who tunes in. I want people to feel and to see the same things that I'm feeling and experiencing, because I think it's important to try and draw people through so they can, if you like, tap into the same energy that's coming from it, you know. And that to me is so vitally important. And the other thing, of course, is to avoid the modern world wherever possible. You know, I mean, on some of the stuff, I can't avoid it. It's impossible. I mean, for example, when I was at Pottsford, there was a major road not far away. I could not avoid cars driving past there, and you would see them occasionally through the trees. But what I do with a lot of my work, and only when I'm arriving at locations, is to strip out the audio of the modern world, of the jets flying over, people shouting, cars going past, and replacing it with a more naturalistic sound. So it creates an atmosphere. So when you actually get there to share it, people can appreciate what you're feeling much more better. I've got a problem at the moment. I've got a four-legged one. It's called Poppy, and she's currently trying to jump on my head at the moment as I'm talking on the microphone. So can you just excuse me a minute? Poppy,
no problem.
Come on, lie down. It's like living with it is. It's like living with a 7-year-old child. She really is. She is such a sweet, a very loving dog. But she's obviously, because she came from a rescue sanctuary, she is very, very sensitive and very insecure. But she is actually overcoming those obstacles. But at the moment, life is very difficult for me. But I don't actually mind, because I actually love the dog. I think she's wonderful. But I cannot experience the things that she went through with her previous owner, and what happened to her at the kennels. These things I can't share, and all I can do is trying to make her feel part of the family as best I can.
In a very good home.
I hope so. I hope actually at some point. Well, I hope to actually take her out with me on some investigations at night, but at the moment she's certainly not ready for that, not by any stretch of the imagination.
Even high levels.
Yeah, I mean, she certainly consent. I get when I'm with her sometimes around the house, you can see that she's picking up on things, and she's reacting to it accordingly. And so I'm just watching what she's up to now. When staffies get bored, they like to chew the house up. No, she's chewing the bone. Yeah, exactly. But anyway, no, she's fine now. But I mean, to continue with what I'm saying, I really want to try and put together. I think I've arrived at my niche where I am with the Man in the Hat to do a daytime historical docudrama, if you like. It's to talk about the history, and to have what I'd like to do in future is to recreate some of the scenes that have given rise to the paranormal activity which exists at these locations. And so it is a theme I'm trying to work forward through. And I was approached about a year ago by a major American production company, but at that point I didn't really have a formula for what I was actually doing, because I was doing little bits of this and little bits of that, and it didn't actually go anywhere. But they were really, really interested in trying to work with me on something. So now I'm trying to put this package, which I have now, to other companies in the UK to see if I can solicit an interest and hopefully be able to develop beyond the level I'm at now. I've actually reached I've reached the ceiling as far as I can go on my own, and I really need better resources. And if I had that, I could really produce some. I think I'm confident. I know it sounds terrible, but I feel really confident that I could produce something that people would enjoy.
Yeah, I've been very consistent, my friend. Your stuff is brilliant. Even your older stuff, the way you progress. I still like looking back at your old stuff.
It's an evolution, isn't it?
If you thought you can't get any better than that, and you go another notch higher again and again and again, and you did brilliantly. I think all your investigations are absolutely superb. The earliest stage as well.
Well, I mean, I suppose to a degree on my last shoot, which was at Pottsford, there was a little bit of M.R. James in the way I was talking about the hauntings at that location. But then, I think it's important to put people in the mood for the night investigation. So if you're covering those tales in graphic detail, it's going to make the viewer a lot more buoyed to watch the show, to watch the night investigation, and to be able to share and experience what they're seeing.
Nice touch. Nice touch. I enjoyed that as the way that we put that. Yeah, that's right. And,
I was a little bit. I must admit, I was a little bit nervous about the execution scene, the hanging, which I thought actually looked really good. I mean, I actually watched a video on YouTube on how to make a noose in order to be able to do this properly. And
beforehand, sort of thing, didn't you?
Well, it's quite funny. I mean, I went to one of those country farmers type stores to buy rope.
Yeah.
And the guy said to me, "Oh, what are you going to use that rope for?" I said, "I'm making a noose." He said, "You're making a noose?" I said, "Yeah." I said, I'm going to execute somebody on camera." I said, "But," and I actually told him the whole story, and he laughed. Well, it was a nervous laugh, really. But anyway, I bought the rope. And then the worst, perhaps, for me was when I went to buy the axe.
Yeah.
Because, this huge axe, and this woman said to me, I said, "Big axe, you got a lot of wood to chop." I said, "No, I'm going to use it on a film as an execution scene." Oh dear, oh dear.
Just the pictures. Just with the pictures to that woman's face.
I was waiting at some point from the credit card details that I provided for the police to arrive at the house, but no one ever turned up. And again, when we were actually shooting it, good friend Alan Carter assisted me with playing the victim and also playing Jonah. And when we were actually going through this, we arrived at Popsford, and it's quite a busy country road. Yeah. And I had to be able to take an axe and rope with a noose from the back of my car across the road without anybody seeing me. And I actually got away with it the first time. When I actually took the stuff back, I just got to the car before another vehicle raced past. And I'm thinking, I hope to God he hasn't seen what I've got in my hands, Like, can you imagine someone phoning the police? I've just seen a man put an axe covered in blood because it had fake blood on it, which I made. I've just seen a man with an axe covered in blood and a noose, and he's put them into the back of the car. You can just imagine it, can't you?
Oh, my goodness.
So, yeah, that was pretty fraught. And, of course, filming in Wickham Market. I know Judy's listening. She helped me. Judy Abbott helped quite a bit. She contacted me to offer to provide information on the history of Jonah Snell. And I'm obviously very happy for her to do that for me. And I was extremely grateful for the amount of material that she was able to furnish. So when I went to Wickham Market to actually film it in the square, of course, it was like a magnet, wasn't it? It was a magnet for all kinds of people. I had old guys driving around in circles, rubbernecking while I was filming. So that completely ruined each shoot. Then I had a guy who was apparently drunk, and he had music speakers fitted to his coat. And he was blaring loud classical music out as he walked past and was chatting to me. And I thought, this is just crazy, isn't it, But anyway, I probably spent maybe a good hour doing about, 5 minutes worth of filming there. But, if you've got to do the job and you've got to finish it, I had to do it that day. So regardless, you've got to laugh at all the inconveniences and just plow on. Well, at the end of the day, it's their town, it's their marketplace, and I'm a visitor. I cannot lay down conditions to them about what they should be doing. I've got to work around what they're doing, and I'm I'm not unhappy about that. It's life, isn't it? And so I was able to continue with that. But obviously, when we got to the actual execution scene, well, that was great because that was a nice, quiet little country track. And we even found a bough of one tree that would support the noose, which was great. And then the other thought that I had, of course, was someone walking past with their dog while I was pretending to hang Alan. It very easily could have all gone wrong completely, but it didn't. It all worked out quite well. So I was really pleased with that. And so, of course, what I'm hoping to develop on this theme is by going to some more interesting remote locations where there's still a tract of that original history there, which can be examined, the history can be discussed, and then we can do an investigation based upon that. So that is something for the future. Yeah. But I would certainly love to... Yeah, sorry.
Sorry, did you pick up an EVP? You did, didn't you, on that investigation? With the Jonas Snell, where he was hung on the gibbet, what remains of it. You picked up an EVP around there, I believe, didn't you?
Yeah, I got some EVP. The weirdest thing was... I mean, obviously, you can hear, for example, when you hear EVP as AVP, you don't. Sometimes you can hear what they're saying, but you just know someone said something. Yeah. And so I wasn't aware exactly of what someone was saying, but I could hear a voice, and so could Alan. But the weirdest for me was that, and I still can't fathom it out to this day, that sound like a metallic chinking noise. You could hear it coming. I was standing there looking at the post, the gibbet, and I could hear much more loudly than what was recorded. I could hear this chinking sound, so it was very odd.
Residual? Sorry, guys. Sorry for the last 4 minutes because we only got about 4 minutes left.
Oh, okay.
Oh no, it's time.
Well, I actually, we got there in the end, didn't we? We were
I
able.
apologise about that.
Well, the mystery's been resolved. But anyway, I thoroughly enjoyed my time with you guys, and for your first show, I think you did rather well. I'm sure everybody sat there clapping their hands. A big round of applause, everybody. And and I mean, again, and hopefully at some point in the future, I'll come back. Now we've resolved these issues to have a proper show.
Yeah, definitely.
We do apologise for that. Sorry. Yeah,
no, not at all.
An absolutely brilliant guest, and we look forward to seeing you again sometime in the not too future.
No, that was a pleasure, and to everybody who's listening, my apologies for the delays this evening, but you know it's teething problems, but we got around it, and it was great to chat. So anyway, I will leave you guys to it, and thank you very much, and say good night to everybody.
Okay, and you.
Good night. God bless, mate. Good night, Chris.
Cheers. Bye-bye.
Bye.
That was Chris, ladies and gentlemen, our first guest, a real heavyweight in the paranormal field, and well, that was a thoroughly entertaining half an hour or so of a talk there about Chris and his experiences in the paranormal field, how he got involved with it. I think it was an absolutely wonderful insight in how he got involved in the paranormal field, and how he went on from there, his interest, and he wanted to make film videos and videos about the paranormal. Absolutely fantastic. Very enjoyable indeed.
But I can watch all these programs for hours on end, like you were saying.
Absolutely. Well, that was wonderful talk there by Chris. I thoroughly enjoyed that.
And
we could have actually had him on for longer, but we only got half an hour instead of 45 minutes. We got half an hour, didn't we? Hearing us like that.
And I would say check out Chris's Haunted Earth light page. Brilliant stuff on there. So I advise you to check that out on Facebook.
Yes, check out his blog and his Facebook page. Yes, very much recommended indeed. Yeah, check them out. You'll absolutely thoroughly enjoy them if you're really into the paranormal. Okay. What next? So we're nearly off air.
Yeah, nearly off air.
Well, that was a great show indeed, ladies and gentlemen. Our first guest. What a way to start the show. What a guest to have. Chris Halton. Absolutely.
Definitely.
Fantastic guest. A really, really interesting man. And funny man as well. Very, very witty. We'll be having Chris on again we'll be having Chris again in the not so foreseeable future, no doubt, and we look forward to that very much indeed. Oh, excuse me, I've got a very bad heavy cold, ladies and gentlemen.